Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this ChIPs DEIB webinar series to celebrate Pride Month, Peace, Love, Revolution. I love that theme so much. I am Monica Phillips, she, her, hers pronouns, and I'm so glad to be here with this incredible group of outstanding women to celebrate Pride Month and this theme of peace, love, revolution. So I know people are coming in. If you have any questions, please put them in the chat. We have Amota Equitafia Thalen from the ChIPs team here to help with any questions or guide us through if you have anything that you need. So just reach out and let us know. And it's my honor to introduce these outstanding panelists who are here to join us. We have Justice Sabrina McKenna, who has served on the Hawaii Supreme Court since 2011. She grew up in Japan and the Philippines before graduating from the University of Hawaii at Manoa. And then it's William Richardson School of Law. And she just received this recognition by the Honolulu magazine, Inspiring Women Who Make Hawaii a Better Place. And the article that highlights your accomplishments, Justice McKenna, is outstanding. So I encourage everyone to read it. And if I can find the link during this program, I'll share it. And then Hilary Ware is Associate General Counsel and Vice President of Litigation and Regulatory Affairs at Netflix. She has global responsibility for Netflix's litigation, regulatory compliance, privacy, data security, and labor and employment teams. She's also the co-chair of the Legal Diversity Committee, and I know we'll get to hear a lot of great work she's done in that capacity, as well as being recognized as a woman leader in tech law by the Recorder and received the Corporate Counsel Award from Bay Area Lawyers for Individual Freedom. DJ Healey is a partner at, I'm sorry, you just switched
Spencer
terms.
Fane.
Spencer Fane, I'm sorry. I was reading my notes and I was like, that's not right. Thank you so much for being here. DJ has been one of the top rated intellectual property attorneys in the US for years and has been rated an IP star by Managing Intellectual Property, the world's leading patent litigators since 2011, in Chambers since 2008, and on and on. Her accomplishments are exceptional. A few years ago, DJ wrote a book called Kindness for the Dam, which she later made into a movie called Leaves of the Tree, which you may hear more about. And I'm excited to hear about your new role. She's tried cases in the U.S. District Court, state courts, the U.S. International Trade Commission, the International Chamber of Commerce, and on and on. And Shauna Madison, who is the Director of People, Culture, and Equity, and a member of the NCLR, the
National Center for Lesbian
Rights.
Rights.
Thank you. I'm sorry, my notes aren't in the right order. I apologize. National Center for Lesbian Rights, and they do just outstanding work to create a thriving, inclusive legal culture, which is really what we're all here to talk about. So many of you may know my mission at ChIPs is to allow us all to create action so that we can show up and say, hey, I maybe didn't get it right yesterday, but today's a new day to try better. And my role here is as an ally. So I'm going to turn it right over to hear from these outstanding panelists. And the first question is, I'd love to have each of you tell us about your identity and what is important to you about it. Shauna, could I turn it to you first?
Absolutely. Thank you. And thank you for having me. Great question. My identity, I identify as a queer Black woman. My pronouns are she and her. I also identify as a first-generation college graduate, first-generation lawyer in my family. And, I identify as a wife as well. All of these things are really important to me because it highlights my intersectionality. Intersectionality is just core to my being. If I'm talking about myself, then I'm talking about my intersecting identities and the other communities that I inhabit. So I always like to mention that I'm a first-gen college graduate and law graduate because it just highlights the importance of building those mentorship programs for folks like me who the first time who saw a lawyer was in law school, right? I also like to highlight the fact that I'm Black and the fact that I walk through life as a Black woman. I like to highlight that I'm a wife because I present as someone who's femme who may look like they're straight, but I'm definitely not. So intersecting identities is very important to me. And so I'm happy to share that with anyone who will listen.
Thank you. Hilary?
Sure. Hi, I'm really laughing at Shauna's comment. So I identify as a lesbian. I've been out since I was 17 in northern Wisconsin, which I don't generally recommend. And I definitely identify as a cis woman. My pronouns are she and her. I do identify very much as a wife. I definitely identify as gay, even though I understand that when I'm zipping around the room, people may not have that immediate assumption. My wife is bi, so we also have a fair amount of conversations in our home on sort of bi and visibility and what that looks like. And we have a blended family of 6 teenagers. So I identify as a very tired mother. And I also identify as an ally, because I think being an ally has to be an intentional identity that you take on and put some of your own energy and power into. And that's a very important part of sort of my diversity journey. And that's an important part of how I identify.
Thank you. Danielle?
Hi, my name is Danielle. I go by DJ. I am a IP litigator. I do patents, copyright, and IP antitrust. I've done all kinds of cases, all kinds of venues. That's not to say that I'm brilliant or running around all over the place. It just means I've been doing this for a very, very, very long time. I'm a transgender woman. I've been transgender my whole life, of course, and it only came out and lived with starting about 7 years ago. My wife and I have been together for about 30 years, and I'm very blessed to have her. In terms of how she sees us, when I first transitioned, my niece said to me, Aunt TJ, does this mean that you and Aunt Becky are lesbians now? And I looked at her and I said, yes, but don't tell me. So she's still making some adjustments there, but she's extremely supportive. She's a wonderful woman, and she is instrumental in everything I do. I'm also a father. I have 2 beautiful daughters, and they've been wonderful and supportive throughout this process. And I found that getting kids through this process, especially older kids, is really enhanced by giving them each an American Express Platinum card. That really helped. In any event, I'm really pleased to be here and talk today to all of you. Thanks.
Thank you, DJ. Justice McKenna?
Aloha, everyone, and thank you. It's so wonderful hearing everyone's stories, and I'm really honored and pleased to be able to be here with you. In terms of my identities, I think I would identify as an Asian American, LGBTQ plus, first 1.5 generation immigrant woman, jurist, and a mom. And each of these identities is really important to me. Asian American. I grew up in Japan and the Philippines, and I say 1.5 generation because I grew up as the daughter of an American father and a Japanese mother, and I attended US military schools in Japan, but my dad died when I was 9, and so it was just me and my Japanese mom at home. And then I came to Hawaii to enter the University of Hawaii, and I experienced culture shock, beginning with people driving to me on the wrong side of the road and almost getting run over on my first day here. So I do identify somewhat as an immigrant too. And of course, I'm a woman, and I identify as a jurist, someone that cares about the law, the judiciary, and even after mandatory retirement, I hope to continue to make contributions. And of course, I identify as a mother of 3 adult children that make me so proud. And I'm really happy to be here. Thanks.
Thank you, Justice McKenna. The first question I'd like to ask is, what would each of you like the ChIPs community to know about being part of the LGBTQ community? And Hilary, I'd love to have you start.
Sure. I think it's always a complicated question, right? Because there's so many facets of being part of the community. One thing that occurs to me right now that I do think it's important to understand is that I think all of us feel very much under siege. And it's personal, right? It's not like we're having a debate politically on sort of should roads be funded by, tolls or by taxes. It's actually a conversation about people's ability to come out, to say that they're gay, to be able to adopt, to be able to foster care kids. Obviously, the trans community is under enormous siege. And so I think right now, on the one hand, we have a great deal of civil rights over the past 30 years that have been hard fought for, but it feels precarious. And that's really jarring, right? And it's that sense of feeling precarious that I think even as my race and class privilege insulate me a great deal from a lot of that. I have the money to write, sort of adoption and second parent agreements. I have the money to contract out of through sort of, wills and other situations. I have the ability to create those. Also, being a lawyer is very helpful in that area. But I think that there is a sense of vulnerability that all of your friends and colleagues who are in the community feel right now that is very, very unsettling. DJ?
I think that one thing that is difficult for a lot of people to understand in the blue state, so to speak, is that in terms of being a transgender person, we are living in two different countries. And I live in Houston, Texas. I'm spending the summer here visiting my daughter in Los Angeles. And to know that it's two different countries, you just have to experience those two places at the same time. My daughter took me to a spa here. Wonderful experience, very welcoming, very open. It was terrific. I had a friend of mine say, well, we should go to the spa at the Houstonian, George Bush's former address in Houston when he was president. And I just said, if I stepped into the women's spa at the Houstonian, I'd probably be arrested. No way, I can't do that. And when I'm out here, I just feel like I'm another face in the crowd, and another woman on the street, and I can do, what I want to do. And it's really got a wonderful sense of normalcy and security. When I'm in Houston now, I feel very insecure. I don't know, when I meet someone, what their feelings are like, where they're from, what they're going to be thinking or doing. I don't feel safe in a lot of places. I mean, physically safe. It's summed up by an experience I had. I'll just close my comment with this: is I went back to Houston about a month ago, and I was sitting at a light, and the guy in front of me, it was Friday afternoon, and I think the guy in front of me was someone who had had a couple extra drinks at happy hour and was sort of nodding off, and he didn't move when the light changed. So after a bit, I gave a little tap to my horn, and then I just drove around him, and he took off chasing me, just like a maniac. And he's driving a real expensive Mercedes, one of those expensive Mercedes Jeeps. And obviously he's like got it in his head that he's going to get me, not necessarily because I'm trans, but because the culture there has become so machismo and hostile. And I realized, he's probably got a gun in his car, because most people, I would say the majority of people in Houston, especially those with money, have a gun in their car. It's very, very common. And I'm thinking he probably got a gun in his car. And there have been a number of shootings ever since our constitutional carry went into effect. And I just said to myself, I'm not in LA anymore. This is like, it's dangerous even for me as a woman, let alone a trans woman. And in terms of legal rights go, yes, the Texas legislature, and I'm so happy that they only meet every other year for 5 months, that the Texas legislature has passed a number of anti-LGBTQ laws, a number of laws targeting trans people and trans youth in particular. But they've also been pretty unkind to women in the laws, and especially the draconian abortion law, and the efforts they've made to make that even tougher and to make enforcement of it even more difficult for people, in the trying to ban interstate travel for abortion. And I realize that I'm back in a situation where, as a woman, I'm a second-class citizen as a matter of law, because there are laws being passed against women. I'm further pushed down because I'm LGBTQ and there are laws being passed against LGBTQ, and I'm a transgender woman and there are laws being passed against transgender women. And as people live and breathe and walk and live in these blue states like California, you can't appreciate, and in conversations I have with people, they don't appreciate what it's like for us to live even in metropolitan areas in red states. It's gotten really hard. Thanks.
DJ, when we first met, you said something to me that really stood out, which was when you transitioned, you suddenly realized that people in the room were not accepting your fact. You said it more eloquently, your facts as facts, that everything you said was questioned. And I wonder how that impacts your expertise as an IP lawyer.
Well, it really has. It hasn't impacted my expertise. My expertise is still there, and if anything, it's gotten sharpened because, as certain people have dropped contacts with me, I've done what a lot of lawyers do, which is dive further into the law and find further refuge in the law. So if anything, I've actually increased my expertise and breadth of knowledge. But no, on the first day, I transitioned. I'd had a leg injury and was Ubering to work, and the Uber map was, not showing the best way. So I'd reach over and I'd tell the guy or the woman, please take this route. Well, the first day I went to work as a woman, presenting as female, I did the same thing. I said, the guy will take this route. And he said, lady, that's wrong. No, that's wrong, lady. I'm going to take what's on the map. And, that was just the start of experiencing this issue where, especially men, were always questioning. I had a senior associate not put some of my revisions into a brief because he thought they weren't important. And I had to remind him that I'm the one who decides what's important, not him. But it came up over and over again. And, I came to learn that that one of the things you got to realize is white men think they make it on their own talent. That's what I thought. I thought I was making it on my own talent. And what I've come to realize is, yeah, that was a big part of it. But a big part of it was I had this incredible white male power pack where I got all kinds of extra credibility, extra attention, extra rights, so to speak. And boy, I wish I had that white male power pack back now. Give me that white male power pack. I don't want to be a male, but I need that power back.
Shauna, what do ChIPs members need to know about being part of the LGBTQ community?
Thank you. And thank you all for sharing so far. I mean, that's a great question. It's a big question because the LGBTQ community, LGBTQIA plus, SG, there are so many different identities in the LGBTQ community. We are not a monolith. And while we're in Pride Month, I guess it's great to say that there are beautiful parts of being in the queer community, in the queer and trans community. It's fun. I'm living my best life. I wouldn't go back to my pre-queer life. But I will say there are some dark sides, and Hilary touched on it heavy and DJ touched on it heavy. We are now facing an onslaught of legislation across the nation that is causing just significant hurdles that we haven't seen in like decades. We thought we made some progress with the Marriage Equality Acts, and my particular organization, the National Center for Lesbian Rights, was on the forefront of battling some of those anti-marriage equality laws and marriage equality cases. And things kind of conked out for a little bit, because if you think about the LGBT community, we're in every single facet of the nation. So even though a piece of legislation or an act is not directly targeting LGBTQ people, we're still being targeted. For example, in June of 2020, where there was this onslaught of Black debt, I'm a part of the LGBT community, so that really impacted me. So I say that to say, even when we see ebbs and flows when it comes to anti-LGBTQ acts, things that are happening in the nation still very deeply impact different facets of people and subsets of our community. As we move forward, though, it's so on the nose, it's so striking what's happening across the nation. A lot of trans athletes are not being able to participate in sports. A lot of trans people are not even be able to seek medical care, the basic medical care that they should be entitled to. And then that's also being directed at trans youth. It's really awful. It's devastating, to be exact. And I really appreciate everyone who's fighting the battle, including the lawyers at my firm right now. They're doing an amazing job. So when knowing about the LGBT community, it's great to know that there are pride events, all across the nation, and it's a beautiful thing. But there are also things that activism, our mere existence is activism. Visibility is a privilege. There's a lot of people who don't come out for fear of being attacked, beaten, or killed. So when the allies, the ChIPs community, want to be great allies, and they see, oh, this person is queer, why aren't they out? Why aren't they coming out or speaking out about their identities? Just know that there's a lot packed into the very act of being visible. And so a way to support your queer allies who decide not to be visible or decide not to tell the world is to just know that there's a lot going on there, and that you could talk to them one-on-one and see what you can do as an ally for that individual person. So I have a lot more to say, but I'll wait. There's tons of questions coming my way.
Thank you so much. Justice McKenna.
Yes, thank you. I share everyone's thoughts. And, I was trying to think of what word. Right now, I feel like it's painful and infuriating. As DJ said, I am so fortunate to live in Hawaii. We are the land of the first Bear versus Lewin, the first court, and I am so honored to serve on the first court to recognize even the possibility of same-sex marriage, and that was in 1993. And we have a very progressive legislature that passes so many laws that are protective in every aspect. And, we don't have the issues that what I call my ohana in Hawaiian, it's family. Everybody, the LGBTQ plus community is my family. And to see my family suffering like this is very, very painful. And so, I'm also a member of the National Asia Pacific American Bar Association, and the LGBTQ network asked that we not go to Indianapolis for our convention, but NAPABA decided, and I understand that it's important that we go to Indiana and we represent and say, and I'm going to be moderating a plenary panel on transgender athletes, because this is awful. Why do you need to go after people like this? These are children. These are people. What is it? What makes you want to be so hurtful? I just don't understand. I think it's terrible what's happening right now. And I hope that all of you out there will be allies and speak up for us.
I appreciate everything that's been said so much recently. And if you don't mind, if I can add my quick thought as an ally, I think this work is hard, and there may be allies on this call who want to be allies, but don't know how to be allies, or don't know that they understand everything. And I think I get to this point a lot in my career where I'm like, I don't necessarily understand it. And it's actually not up to me to understand. the only thing that I need to know is that I can respect the people I'm with, and I can find out how to do that, because I don't have all the answers. And I think that's just such an important part of what all of you are sharing in these incredible stories. Justice McKenna, it is infuriating. It is so heartbreaking that we can't see that everyone deserves mutual love. It's actually just so shocking to me. So I'd love to ask this question, Justice McKenna, what are the opportunities for straight allies to do better?
You know, one of the things that I always thought is, why does it always have to be me, the members of the community, to speak up and say, hey, can we get away from the binary in our decisions or how we write things or in our rules? And people are so receptive. But, why does it have to be me to say, hey, this is years ago, but hey, these jokes, please tell this judge that these gay jokes and, mimicking, this is not funny and that it's painful. Why do I have to say it? Why do I have to be the one that comes out and says these things, right? We need everyone to speak up, and whether in legislation, to please go to the legislature and, testify and say, this is wrong. Say, I'm not even a community. And as my nuclear family doesn't have a member of this community, but this is just wrong. This is just like saying, we can discriminate against you because you're Asian or you're Black. This is just wrong. So I ask that the straight allies, the cis allies, please speak up and be proactive, and don't make it like, oh, it's for the diversity committee to handle or to raise the issues. When you see the issue, raise it and do something about it.
Thank you so much. Hilary, tell us more about the power of language.
There's a lot of power in language. Definitely amplify what Justice McKenna said, right? One of the ways that I think is important to think about allyship is it's actually putting some of your own power into the service of somebody else, right? So that means you take a little bit of a risk too, right? Because we're already out there being the risk in many cases. And I always tell my kids, I never want to hear that somebody said something offensive about anybody without you at least saying that's messed up. Like maybe in that moment, you're not ready for the big fight. I get it. Nobody likes being 13. But if you don't even say those little words, you don't put any, you're taking no stand of your own, and everybody else who's wondering, who also thinks it's messed up, doesn't think that you're an ally. So at a minimum, I have a personal rule of not letting messed up conversations, comments, observations, or assumptions pass without saying, it's kind of wrong, or I don't think we say that anymore, or that's messed up. And I don't always use messed as a verb there. And I think that that's a very tangible way of challenging yourself not to let stuff slide. On the part of language, look, language is self-defining. Language is important. Language is your identity, right? How you name yourself, right? Whether you identify as lesbian or gay or bi or trans or Black or African-American or Asian American or Japanese American, like your identity and your words get to be yours. And the most important thing that we can do language-wise as allies is honor somebody else's language, honor how they want to be talked. And that's little things. If somebody says their name is Nicholas, don't say, hi, Nick. They didn't say, my name is Nick, right? And then it's much bigger things. At dinner last night, my daughter, I said, I'm hearing you using they, them. I said, what are your pronouns right now? And they were like, now they're they, them. And I was like, good to know, because for a while, they were kind of flipping between them. And now my job as a parent is to honor that. And my job as a colleague is to honor that. And it is not that hard. Really, pronouns are not that tricky. I promise they're not. And it's so undermining of people, right? When you say it's too hard to remember, it's too hard to do. Well, I don't know, do you want to be addressed as Filipino American or maybe I'll just, and then you decide how the person's identity wants to be manifested. And that's such an act of taking away power and creating disrespect. I think in 2023, the ability to complain about pronouns is gone. Let that ship sail. It is done. Just take a deep breath and move into it, and it will be better. Everybody will be better.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the way people ought to think about this at work or wherever, is to think about what would happen if you walked into the kitchen to get some coffee and there were two of your coworkers having a conversation about the Black people in the office. You would immediately say something and they would immediately shut it down. Or if they were having a conversation about the Jewish person in the office, you'd shut it down. Anyone would. So how is it that if people are having a conversation about the trans lady or, the gay guy, that's not getting shut down? And the problem everyone fails to realize is that once you make it okay to be prejudiced against a set of people, you've made it okay to be prejudiced against any set of people. And, we've seen, for example, as this anti-LGBT movement has grown, that the number of attacks on Jews and Jewish places of worship has increased dramatically. As we see this anti-LGBT legislation passing the legislature, we also see legislation that limits how history can be taught and what can be said. You can't teach slavery if you teach it in a way about slavery, if you teach it in a way that's going to upset the little white kids in the class. Well, bottom line is slavery was the horror that this nation was built on. For the first decades of the American experience, the cash crop, the cash export was cotton. And America never would have thrived without cotton. And that cotton was picked by people who had been kidnapped, brutalized, and forced to work in slavery. How can you teach about American history without teaching about that? What's happening is things are getting worse for every group because we now have given, where the people who are running things feel like they can give permission to discriminate, that they're empowered to discriminate. And that discrimination gets worse for all groups if it's allowed to thrive and flourish for any group. So we need to treat discrimination against LGBTQ people the same way we treat it as to Black people or Jewish people or any other race or religion. You're not going to go in the coffee room and put up with people making jokes about the handicapped guy in the office. Don't put up with them making jokes about the trans lady or the gay guy.
Any other comments about that?
Yeah, well, just to echo, just to put a fine point in it, I like to be specific with folks and how they can assist us. So Judge McKenna hinted on it and stuff as well, but specifically ruin the dinner. If you're at a dinner with your racist grandpa or your biased uncle or grandma or something like that, if you feel safe enough to, let's talk about safety. If you feel safe enough to it, ruin that dinner and let them know on a granular level that what they said will not be tolerated. That's one way to spark change in just your circle, your subset, because maybe one day grandpa or grandma or uncle won't go out and say that in the workplace, right? Because they knew they already garnered a reaction from somebody who's an ally or in the community, and that reaction wasn't favorable to them. So if you can, shut it down, even in your circle, so that when they enter the world, they're not repeating these things. And to go further than that, once you get into the workplace and you're seeing policies and procedures that are using language that's just so specific, let's make sure it's inclusive. Like at the National Center for Lesbian Rights, I do in-house work for them, general counsel work, and I'm on the HR side. So when I'm writing policy for folks and it says nursing mothers, or it's like, actually, let's talk about that a little bit. It's nursing employees, right? When someone says, oh, make sure to bring your husbands to the barbecue, I'm saying, bring your partners, bring your spouse, bring your registered domestic partners, right? Let's just keep it a little bit more open, because language really, truly does matter. And if you have the privilege to step out of just focusing on language and policies and financially contribute to these organizations who are doing the work, I would highly encourage you to do that. My organization is a nonprofit, HRC is a nonprofit, Equality California is a nonprofit. All of these spaces are wholeheartedly giving every second of every day to fighting against these anti-LGBTQ policies that are plaguing the nation right now. And they're doing it on a nonprofit salary and on a nonprofit budget. If you have the power and privilege to, give financially to these organizations, even a low amount, because it does make a difference. We have some people who went to an NCLR panel the other day and were so inspired, they put us in their will. And I was so taken aback. I was like, oh my goodness, someone cares enough to make sure that this organization survives them, surpasses them, and we are now a part of their legacy. So there's so many different things that allies can do to assist the LGBTQ community, because we're not going anywhere. That's the beauty of it. We've been here, we've always been here through ancient times and Roman times, and we will continue to thrive despite what's happening on the other side. So thank you to folks for what they've already done. And I encourage you, if you can, just do a little bit more.
We can put some links in the chat too, Shauna, to help raise awareness for that and encourage those on this call and others to donate, to support the organizations, to get involved in the advocacy, the work that you're doing. And I'd love to also hear more, Shauna, about the impact of intersectional bias that you've touched on just a little bit.
Absolutely. I mean, the intersectional bias, I mean, everyone has a bias. I was a sociology major in undergrad, and I double major sociology, African-American studies with a minor in sexuality studies. Basically studied myself on someone else's dime. But ultimately, in sociological spaces, everyone has the desire, the innate desire to put people in categories. That's how we move through the world. That's how we try to make sense of things. So at the base level, I understand it. But as you get older, as you experience others, as you legitimately just walk outside and see that everybody's skin color doesn't match yours, at that point, you have to have the wisdom to discern, okay, everyone's not the same. This box I put them in is not the box that they can live in. How can I open my mind up to seeing that this is a multi-dimensional person, right? And having that ability to do that it not only just helps you, but it helps others around you. So bias is, I mean, it's there. You have to transcend that by exposing yourself to other cultures, to other organizations. One of my dear friends is in here, Ray Rowland. He was recently a past president of the Filipino Bar Association, the first LGBTQ Filipino Bar Association president, right? Brilliant. And having a person like that in that position, it shows that, look at this, we have a person who has many intersecting identities here, advocating on behalf of their communities, right? The exposure to Ray alone is beautiful. And so it happens all the time. What I encourage people to do, because I like to give concrete things, is educate yourself. There's really no need for you to go directly to the person. Like, we're doing you all a favor here by being on the panel and giving you all this good information in one hub. But short of that, please go pick up a book. There are many, many out there. And I'm not just talking about Right Fragility, right? I'm talking about the Memo, right? There's like, I can put them in the chat too. There's so many niche books and movies and documentaries. Go on Netflix, Hulu, like Peacock. There's so many. Educate yourself. Yes, mend the hearts. Yes, educate yourself and then start putting your education to action, right? That's exactly what Judge McKenna was saying. Once you know better, you do better, right? If you see something, say something. And so I'm happy to give more specific examples, but I think ultimately knowledge is power. And the more you know about the different communities around you, and you can take them out of that tiny little box you put them in, the more you're going to experience yourself grow and your community.
I love what you said, Shauna, and I agree. Like, it's not, your job to educate the person who's trying to be the white ally. At the same time, I think the most beneficial thing for me has been to expand my friend circle. Because it is hard. People can say like walk a mile in someone else's shoes. Like, I didn't know what it was like to be a mother until I became a mother. And then I appreciated my own mother enormously, like zillions times more, because I was like, oh, as much as I thought I knew, I had no idea. I can't know what that experience is for everyone. But when I hang out with friends in the evening and I hear their experiences and I hear all of your stories, it helps me get a little bit closer to that experience. And then I can be like, oh, I heard my friend experienced this, and then it's not like all stranger people I don't know. It's like friend, neighbor, person I love and care deeply for and respect. And then it just makes it a little bit easier to be like, hey, wait, you can't say that. I heard someone get called this and it made me very uncomfortable. So yeah, do the work, show up for panels like this, and go expand your network, make friends with someone you've never been friends with. It's just extraordinary experiences. Anyone else want to add to that?
If I can follow up on something that Shauna said that I think is just so important. I really appreciate everyone's comments here. But I think that in terms of just your everyday activity, whether it's your friend circle or acquaintance circle or your social circle at work, the never say bring your boyfriend or your girlfriend or your never say that. Just say you're welcome to bring someone, or you're welcome to bring your significant other, or whatever it might be. But don't the language of compulsory heterosexuality is really, really tough. And so please, just by you saying something like that, and if you see a memo saying, husbands and wives welcome, say spouses welcome. When you see things within your office, change that language, change the terminology. And when you get away from the cisgender, heterosexual language, it makes the community feel like, this is a welcoming place. So please be conscious of that.
To follow up with that, what are some of for all of the panelists, what are some of the stereotypes that you want to stop, that, those who are here on this call could learn from and recognize so that they can do a little better?
I think I'm going to jump from the last question a little bit and then I'll move into it. I think one thing that folks don't think about in the context of people who are LGBTQ is also coming out is constant and in ebbs and flows in moments, right? So I probably come out once a day, which is weird because I've been out for 35 years. Because, I'll be in the grocery store and somebody will say, oh, was that your husband who came in yesterday? And then in that little moment, I just have to figure out, do I want to be like, about it? Or do I want to say, no? Am I tired? And do I just want to say maybe? Or do I want to be like, well, actually, I'm gay. My wife came in. She's the one with the dark, So, and that happens all the time. So just know that, number one, if you're with somebody whom identifies as queer, which I use as an umbrella term, it's a little tiring to finesse that constantly, right? And so at some point, it's also very tricky as a lawyer in some cases, right? Now that I'm a client, it's way less tricky. But I have definitely been in jurisdictions, and DJ, you have my full respect, because every time I'm in, like rural jurisdictions on cases, I am just like, I think I'm going to be super pronoun neutral and not talking a whole lot. So it's a big flag. It's not so much a stereotype, but it's a flag of like, just being aware that I've been with people where they were like, is that your husband? I'm like, sure. And my friends are like, no, it literally was not. And they know I'm out, and I live in San Francisco. It's a very safe community. And I've had to sort of explain to them, like, today I'm just tired, right? I don't really feel like having a discussion with the gas guy on my lesbianism. So, just know that a little bit of the code switching that you may see is real. And some of it's survival, but some of it is just literally like, it's a lot. And I've been doing it for a long time. So it's kind of just to know that, because I've had people who are like, oh my God, are you back in the closet? And I was like, no, it's just been a long Thursday. And just to know that.
Yeah, I want to say that can y'all hear me? What I'd like to say is that's so true. You know, the telephone is the bane of a trans person's life. And people will call up and I'll answer the phone and they'll say, well, we need to talk to Danielle Healey. I said, well, this is Danielle Healey. And they're like, you can tell they're like, what? But bottom line is I'll say typically, well, I'm a transgender woman. That's why my voice is so low. Or they'll call for David Healey and I'll explain, well, no, I'm now Danielle and I'm transgender. So what can I do for you? But sometimes, you know, I'll get a call when I'm tired, I'm burned out, I'm watching TV, and they'll call, I'm calling for David Healey. Is this David Healey? Yeah, what do you want? It's like you know, what do you want? Leave me alone. And I don't get into it. But it can be exhausting, and it can be difficult, especially when you're constantly seeing people or meeting people in some context or another who've never met a transgender person or who've met one and didn't realize it or who don't know or understand it. I view it as sort of my responsibility to take the time to explain to people, to be relatable, to be there if they want to talk, but just to be a normal human being. I mean, yeah, when I'm in Texas, there's things I won't do. I won't go in a ladies' locker room. I won't go to a restroom if I see kids going into the restroom. You know, I won't go in certain areas where, you know, I'm afraid that people have an excess of weapons and alcohol with them. But that being said, you know, I do feel that it's my responsibility to the community to be out and to be willing to share my perspectives. And if they don't want to hear it from me, fine. If they can just see that I'm a normal, regular person and I'm out, you know, and I'm not a freak, I'm not a weirdo, you know, I'm just another, you know, 60-ish year old lady who likes to do all the things, you know, your mom likes to do, or your sister likes to do. That's fine, because then that normalizes the condition. So I think it is important to be out to people.
DJ, there's a question in the chat. It follows along with something I wanted to ask you anyway, which is, were your coworkers accepting of your transition? What was that reaction? And then the other kind of two-part of that is the challenges you had in your career in making the transition. And you've touched a little bit on where it's not safe to show up, but specifically in the legal industry, I would love to hear that how that experience was for you.
Well, you know, I was fortunate because of two things. One, that the fashion of the day in most corporate and attendant legal circles is diversity, yay, 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 let's all be diverse, hey, hey, hey. That inclusion part gets dropped off a lot, but you know, the diversity is policy. Putting that aside, I opened the Houston office of Fish in 2008, and most of the people who worked there were people who had come with me from Weil Gotshal. And a lot of the people who came with me from Weil Gotshal to Weil Gotshal when I went there were from my own patent litigation firm. So, you know, I had worked with some of the people in that room, you know, when I came out for 20, 25 years. And even the ones I hadn't worked with for that long, they knew me. And I think most of them were, I won't say most of them, I think everyone was supportive. Some people really went out of their way to be super supportive. So coming out within my Houston office was a very positive experience. Coming out of the firm, you know, was fine, so to speak. I will say that within a year, I lost almost all my clients. I was fired by one of my clients, an oil field services company that I'd done a lot of work for, within a few weeks of my transition. And, you know, it was not only was I fired, but I was told by the general counsel, don't ever call or talk to me again. Welcome Texas. Um, so, that was difficult. There was a big drop off. I used to get a lot of calls from people, just very short calls, things I would never bill for on, this question, that question, da, 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 da. And those calls pretty well stopped. And I don't know if they stopped because people, thought of me as a woman and they weren't going to call a woman to ask her these questions, or if they thought, I was trans. And a lot of people do have it in the back of your head that if you're a trans woman, you're crazy. And I think part of it is that, I was a wealthy white man in a profession that carried a lot of power, and I'm at the top of that profession. And so, I'm sitting in the catbird seat. And now all of a sudden, I've given that up to be not just a woman, but a trans woman in a hostile environment. And there's a lot of, you must be crazy. You must be crazy. And one interesting statistic I'll tell you is there are about 100,000 lawyers in the Texas bar. So statistically, if you take, say, 0.5% or 0.5% or less as the number of trans women, you should still have several hundred out there. I know about maybe 5, maybe 6 out trans women lawyers in Texas. I know a number of trans women lawyers who will go out in private and, live their truth, but who have not transitioned at work because, they know something that I didn't. And, I thought, what a great business plan. I'll transition in Texas in the age of Trump. That'll give me all kinds of great publicity in business. Not so much. But they knew that was going to be a harm to their career. And so there are trans women in Texas who are closeted. I know a lot of them. I know a lot of them are very successful lawyers. And statistically, there should be about 3, 4, 5, 600. If you want to identify them, there's 3, 4, 5, 6. So
This is it's been such a great conversation. I really appreciate how vulnerable you all are to share all these great insights with the community. And I have kind of a big final question, but if maybe each of you could share one thing that we can all do to create a culture of self-care that supports psychological safety at work. I know that's a lot, but in this mission for action and opportunity, and definitely connect with all of the panelists here, support the NCLR and Shauna's work to focus on advocacy in the space. And then I'll turn it over to you, Hilary.
I'll try to do a sentence just because I know we're coming up on time. I would say be a relentless voice for equality, even at some amount of personal cost, because that's what everybody else is doing right in their own communities. If it's not fair, if it's not just, if it's not respectful, be relentless in refusing to accept that and refusing to allow it. And then have fun, because honestly, like doing diversity work and being in the community and, broadening part of your life is also full of a tremendous amount of joy and a tremendous amount of return.
Thank you. Justice McKenna?
I would just say, just be inclusive and be kind. And I just feel so privileged to live in Hawaii, where I believe what we call the aloha spirit is real. And it's just an idea of treating people with love, with kindness, with grace. And I hope Senator Danielle Akaka, the late senator, I think aloha is Hawaii's gift to the world. And if we could just spread that throughout the world, we'd all be fine. And I'm sorry I have to log off now to join another panel, but it's been an honor. Thank you.
And
Thank you, Justice.
practice
Thank
in
you.
your courtroom. Thank you so much. Shauna?
I know this might sound counterintuitive, but go to therapy. Everyone, please do your own self-work before you step in a space where you're going to engage with people of different races, of different cultures, of different ethnicities and sexual orientations and gender identities. Read books, watch documentaries, and enjoy the 21st century where all the information is literally at the tip of your fingers. If you really don't know, even engage with ChatGPT. How should I ask someone about their pronouns? And I assure you, it will spit out a nice little thread for you to ask someone and to just engage. So I really want to emphasize that being an ally is doing the self-work, addressing your biases, addressing the way that you move through the world. Because if it starts on an individual level, everybody's doing their individual best, it can only grow to a collective best. So I know it sounds counterintuitive, but find your local therapist, please.
Sounds fantastic.
And
DJ?
I'd just like to add that give everybody a break. And if somebody uses the wrong pronouns or uses the wrong name, just tell them, oh, that's okay. People get that wrong all the time. Blah, blah, blah. Use this. Do it this way. And, people are doing it deliberately to insult you. That's a different story. But I think we need to encourage people to acknowledge us by eliminating any penalty for not doing it right, or not doing it every time, or not doing it promptly. And so I think when people are just people and making a mistake or being tired or clueless, whatever, cut them some slack, give them a break, give them in a kind, nice, funny way if you can, how you would like to be addressed or how they might address somebody else. And if they're obnoxious and use this as an opportunity to put you down, respond in kind. But most people try to be polite. They may not try to be kind, they may not try to be nice, but most people try to at least be polite.
It's been such a gift. This has really been just the icing on the cake. This conversation is really important. And I hope that we can have more conversations like this throughout the ChIPs community to make sure that we are creating safe spaces for all of these brilliant people to do their best work and thrive, because we all spend a lot of time at work and it's important that we get it right. And I know that for me, I don't always do the right thing every day. And so I can show up and be like, okay, let me try better. And I think that's a call for all of us to be the best ally you can be. Whether you're in this community or not, you get to be an ally for this community. You get to show up and you get to say, I can do a little bit better today. So I've really appreciated all of you sharing. Thank you so much. We'll add the resources, Shauna, that you've shared and a few others in the follow-up. The video will be available soon, and I hope that you'll all get in touch. Thank you. It's been a pleasure.